Lovely viewers, you might want to sit down for this one, because what's unfolding right now between three of Korea's biggest stars feels like something ripped straight out of a drama script. Only this time there are no cameras, no rehearsals, and no rewrites. This is real life, and the emotions are running higher than we've ever seen. Picture this. Lee Min-ho, the man we've all admired for his calm, composed charisma, is suddenly pushed to his limits after discovering a deeply personal message from none other than Song Joong-ki to his wife, Song Hye-kyo. And it's not just any message. It's a raw, desperate plea with the words that have now set the internet ablaze. Please take me back. Now let's slow it down and step into this moment together as if we were standing right there when everything happened. The scene begins quietly enough. Lee Min-ho and Song Hye-kyo had been enjoying what seemed to be a peaceful afternoon in their luxury mansion, sipping tea in the garden while discussing plans for an upcoming family event. The sun was warm, the breeze gentle, and everything felt picture perfect, until her phone buzzed. At first, she didn't think much of it, just another message among the dozens she receives every day. But when her expression shifted, ever so slightly, Min-ho noticed. You know how in dramas, there's that exact moment when a character senses something is wrong. That's exactly what happened here. His smile faded, replaced by quiet concern. "Who is it?" he asked, trying to keep his voice light, but his eyes searched hers for an answer. Song Hye-kyo hesitated for a second too long, and in that pause, the atmosphere changed. She finally unlocked her phone, and there it was, a notification with the sender's name in bold. Song Joong-ki. The preview of the message was enough to cause a ripple of tension. "Please take me back." Min-ho reached out. His hand steady but his jaw tightening. "Let me see it." She passed the phone over without a word, perhaps knowing that hiding it would only make things worse. As his eyes scanned the full message, the stillness of the garden seemed to vanish. This wasn't just a casual hello or a friendly check-in. The words on the screen were loaded with emotion, regret, and longing. Joong-ki's message spoke about sleepless nights, how he couldn't stop thinking about the times they had shared, how he wished he could undo the mistakes that led to their separation. And then the line that cut through everything. "Please take me back, even if it's just as a friend at first. I still love you." Imagine being in Min-ho's position at that exact second. Here's the woman he's chosen to spend his life with, the person he's fought for, supported, and built a future alongside, now being pulled, even if only in words, by someone from her past. His heart pounded, his mind racing between anger, disbelief, and the instinct to protect what's his. He wasn't just upset about the message itself. It was the fact that Joong-ki felt bold enough to send it, knowing she's now married. What does he think he's doing? Min-ho's voice was low at first, but the intensity in his tone was undeniable. Song Hye-kyo reached out to touch his hand, but he pulled back slightly, still gripping the phone as if it were a piece of evidence in a crime. "This isn't okay. This isn't respectful. He's crossing a line." Viewers, can you picture the tension in that moment? Every breath felt heavy. Every second felt longer than the last. Min-ho stood up, pacing, his usually measured demeanor cracking under the weight of this emotional bombshell. Song Hye-kyo tried to explain that she hadn't replied, that she didn't expect this, that she was just as surprised as he was. But Min-ho wasn't just hearing the words. He was feeling the sting of the situation. Here's where it gets even more intense. A close friend of the couple, who happened to be visiting that day, later revealed that Min-ho actually considered calling Joong-ki on the spot. "If he thinks he can send you this and I'll just sit here quietly, he's wrong," Min-ho had said, his voice sharper than anyone had ever heard it. But Hye-kyo, ever the calm presence, urged him not to act in anger. She knew that a heated confrontation could spiral into a public feud, and once something like that hits the media, it's impossible to control. Still, the words "please take me back" kept echoing in Min-ho's mind like a stubborn song you can't get rid of. It wasn't just about jealousy. It was about principle. He had been nothing but respectful toward Joong-ki in the past, even when their relationship history was brought up in interviews and gossip. But this message felt like a direct challenge, an intrusion into the home and the life they'd built together. Let's pause here and imagine ourselves in Min-ho's shoes. You're in love, happily married, and suddenly confronted with proof that your partner's ex still harbors strong feelings, strong enough to openly express them. How do you respond? Do you let it go, trusting your partner completely? Or do you confront the sender to draw a firm boundary? This is where things get interactive, lovely viewers. Think about your answer, because Min-ho was standing right on that crossroads. As the day wore on, the tension didn't fade. Min-ho barely touched his dinner that night, his thoughts clearly elsewhere. Song Hye-kyo tried to lighten the mood, telling stories and making small talk, but his silence spoke volumes. At one point she placed her hand over his and said, "I chose you. That hasn't changed, and it never will." That should have been reassuring, and in many ways it was. But the sting of disrespect from Joong-ki's message still burned in his chest. Later that night, while Hye-kyo was in another room, Min-ho sat alone on the balcony, scrolling through the message again. This time, he noticed something. Joong-ki had sent it late at night, almost like a confession poured out in a moment of vulnerability. It didn't make it right, but it added a layer of complexity. Was it an impulsive mistake? Or was it calculated, meant to cause cracks in their marriage? By the next morning, Min-ho had made a decision. He wasn't going to let this fester in silence. But instead of exploding publicly, he decided to have a private conversation, man to man. The plan was simple. Address it directly, make it clear that the message crossed a line, and put an end to it once and for all. But before he could, the news broke. Somehow, a screenshot of the message had leaked online, and fans were in a frenzy. Social media was on fire. Hashtags about the situation trended for hours, with fans taking sides. Some accused Joong-ki of being disrespectful. Others argued that he was just being honest about his feelings. But the overwhelming majority rallied behind Min-ho and Hye-kyo, praising their relationship and urging them to stay strong. Min-ho, however, wasn't concerned about the public's opinion at that moment. He cared about making sure Joong-ki understood that this could never happen again. Lovely viewers, can you feel the weight of that? A man who is usually known for his quiet strength, now faced with a very public test of his love and his patience. The conversation between Min-ho and Joong-ki would become one of the most talked about private meetings in recent entertainment history. And while no cameras were there to record it, the details that have trickled out since paint a vivid picture of just how explosive it really was. The story has grown into something so layered, so emotionally charged, and so revealing, that every new detail feels like peeling back another page of a drama script we can't stop watching. But this isn't fiction. It's a real, raw situation playing out in the lives of three of the biggest stars in Korea, and every glance, word, and reaction seems to matter more than the last. The morning after that heated moment in the garden, Lee Min-ho's resolve had sharpened like steel. He had spent the night alternating between pacing in the balcony's cool night air and staring at the faint glow of Song Joong-ki's message on the phone. He'd read it over and over, each time finding himself caught between disbelief and a simmering anger. The words, "Please take me back," weren't just a nostalgic whisper. They were a line in the sand, and to Min-ho, that line had been crossed. But here's where things take an even more personal turn. Min-ho wasn't just upset because an ex had reached out. He was upset because this was someone who knew exactly what it meant to Hye-kyo to move forward. This was someone who had been a major chapter in her life, and who, in Min-ho's eyes, should have had the decency to respect the fact that she'd chosen a new life, a new love, and a new commitment. The more he thought about it, the more he realized he couldn't just ignore it. The morning sunlight filtered through the tall windows of their kitchen as Song Hye-kyo poured herself a coffee. She was dressed casually, her hair tied back, but her eyes were searching Min-ho's face for clues about where his head was at. "You didn't sleep," she said softly, almost more as a statement than a question. He didn't deny it. Instead, he placed his own coffee down and leaned on the counter, looking at her with a seriousness she rarely saw from him. "I'm going to talk to him," he said simply. Her brow furrowed. "Min-ho," she set her cup down. "You know what will happen if this turns into a confrontation. The media will. I don't care about the media, he cut in, his tone calm but edged. I care about us. About boundaries. He needs to know that what he did isn't just inappropriate. It's unacceptable. There was a pause where the only sound was the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. Haikyo reached for his hand. I know you're hurt. But don't do it in anger. Don't let him pull you into something that makes you regret your words later. Her voice was gentle, but her touch was steady, almost as if she knew he needed grounding in that moment. And while her plea reached him on some level, Minho couldn't shake the idea that silence might be mistaken for weakness. By midday, whispers of the message had begun to circulate online. It was subtle at first. A vague post on a gossip forum claiming, a certain top actor has reached out to his ex-wife despite her being married now. But in the age of the internet, it didn't take long for fans to connect the dots. Hashtags began popping up, speculative threads grew longer by the minute, and soon enough the names Lee Min-ho, Song Hye-kyo, and Song Joong-ki were all trending together. That's when things began to spiral. A mutual acquaintance of both Min-ho and Joong-ki, someone who'd worked with them both on separate projects, apparently tried to mediate, calling Min-ho to suggest letting things cool down before taking action. But Min-ho's mind was already made up. He didn't want a middleman. This wasn't about public image or professional circles. This was about personal respect. That evening, in the privacy of his study, Min-ho picked up his phone and dialed Joong-ki's number. His heart was steady, but his grip on the phone was tight. The call connected after a few rings. Hello. Joong-ki's voice was quiet, almost uncertain. It's Min-ho, came the reply. Calm, firm, and without hesitation. I figured you'd call. I'm not calling to figure anything out, Min-ho said. His tone as controlled as it was intense. I'm calling to make something very clear. You don't get to send her messages like that. Not now. Not ever. There was silence on the other end for a moment before Joong-ki spoke. I wasn't trying to cause trouble. I needed her to know how I feel. Min-ho's voice didn't rise, but it grew sharper. She knows how you feel. She's made her choice. And that choice is me. Respect that. The air between them was heavy, the kind of tension where you could almost hear the unsaid words. Joong-ki finally said, You don't understand. I understand enough, Min-ho interrupted. I understand that whatever history you two have, it's in the past. And I'm not going to let anyone, no matter who they are, try to pull her back into it. For a moment neither man spoke. Then in a tone that carried finality, Min-ho said, Don't contact her again. Not like this. If you have any respect for her at all, you'll leave her be. And with that he ended the call. Lovely viewers, can you feel the weight of that? This wasn't the fiery shouting match some might expect. It was a controlled, deliberate stand, the kind of confrontation that leaves no room for misunderstanding. But of course, in the world of celebrities, nothing truly stays private for long. By the next day, the call had somehow leaked to the press. Not the full audio, but enough details from sources close to the situation to paint a picture. Headlines exploded. Lee Min-ho and Song Joong-ki's heated call over Song Hye-kyo. Love triangle tension boils over. Please take me back message causes rift. And the reactions. Oh, they were mixed and passionate. Some fans applauded Min-ho for defending his marriage, calling him a real man and a protective husband. Others felt Joong-ki's message was a cry for help rather than an attack. But one thing was certain. The drama had officially left the private sphere and gone fully public. Song Hye-kyo, for her part, stayed out of the public commentary entirely. She went about her schedule, smiling for the cameras when needed. But those who knew her said she was quietly working to keep the storm from damaging the life she'd built with Min-ho. In private, she reassured him that her loyalty hadn't wavered, that the message was nothing more than a shadow from the past that she had no intention of stepping into again. But still, the tension lingered. Friends of the couple noticed that Min-ho was quieter than usual in the days that followed, as if the whole ordeal had forced him to see just how fragile peace can be when the past tries to intrude. And yet, in a strange way, it also seemed to draw them closer. Their late-night conversations became longer, their morning routines a little more affectionate, as if they were silently reminding each other of the choice they'd both made. And somewhere out there, Song Joong-ki remained silent. No public statement, no follow-up message, nothing. Whether it was out of respect for Min-ho's words or simply a decision to retreat from the chaos, no one knew for sure. But one thing was certain: the ripple from that single message would be felt for a long time. Lovely viewers, that's the power of moments like this. They reveal not just cracks or conflicts, but also the strength of the foundation holding everything together. And in this case, while the fire burned hot, it also seemed to forge something even stronger between Lee Min-ho and Song Hye-kyo.